Welcome to the Weekends with Bernie podcast. I'm Tom Everett Scott, taking you on a father and son journey through a season of fantasy football. Bernie Gallagher is a retired sports reporter and bartender, teaming up with his son, Jason, a composer in Los Angeles. They will attempt to conquer the league I created. They will have to overcome injuries, trash talk, heartbreaking loss, and that's just between the two of them. Join us as we talk fathers and football on Weekends with Bernie. All right, I'd like to welcome to the show our next guest. He's the award-winning fantasy sports writer and host of the Late Round podcast, JJ Zachariason. Welcome.
What's up, man? You know, it's very flattering that you actually know how to pronounce my last name. Whenever I go on shows like this, it's always Zachariason, or like some people, like, whenever I get like spam phone calls, it's Zachariason. Like the people I've known, but I appreciate you for not butchering the last name.
I really respect you. I love you as a brother, and I would never mess up your name.
I appreciate it.
Welcome to the garage. Welcome to our podcast, or as we like to call our dadcast, which is ironic you're joining us in the garage because you're live from your mom's basement, right?
I am, correct. Yes, I've been here for the last 35 years of my life, correct.
Perfect. And you're kind of the perfect guest for this show because you are a fantasy football guy who could help these two with their fantasy football team, but also you have a lot of dad-related content.
I do.
Yeah, you're a dad. You have a dad, and you coined the phrase "dad runner."
I did, yeah. That started. I don't know if anyone remembers Jake Ballard, the tight end. He played for the Patriots for a little bit.
Oh, I thought Jason Witten was the original.
No, Jake Ballard, who also was a character on the show Scandal, but Jake Ballard was running on the sideline, like warming up one day. And he's sort of like, one of those like kind of heftier tight ends. It's not, he doesn't have like a crazy 40 or anything. He's not super athletic. He was running on the sidelines and he tore his ACL warming up. And from there, I sort of like, I made the comment that he was like, cause he was like jogging, right? He was like dad running on the sidelines. And then from there, it just became this thing where anytime, specifically tight ends, anytime these tight ends, caught the ball and were running down the field, it was no longer just a tight end running down the field. It was dad running. And so we get a lot of dad runners now in the league.
Yeah. And I think that's a easily relatable image. A lot of us run that way.
Yes. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Ben Roethlisberger was a big dad runner, throughout. Anytime a quarterback, an unathletic quarterback is scrambling, is usually he's dad running.
What else is going on with you in your life? I mean, you're a new dad now, right?
Avery just turned 5 at the end of July, and tonight is actually her orientation for kindergarten, which is just wild to think about, right? So I have Avery, and then we adopted a baby boy in February, beginning of February. He's CJ, and he's the coolest. So we have two little kids in the house.
We like to ask any growing up or recently any great sports memories with your dad.
Yeah, no. I have a ton of sports memories. We actually, growing up, split season. So I'm from Pittsburgh, born and raised Pittsburgh. And we had season tickets from like 2001 to like 2011 ish. It was like around the time that Heinz Field had opened, and we split them with our relatives. So we went to like half the games, we had 2 tickets, but my dad and I would go all the time. It would be either like my dad and me, or my brother and I. My brother's 6.5 years older than me. So he would, before I had my driver's license, he could drive down and we would go to the Steeler games and stuff. But I remember one of the games I was with my dad, and it was against the Patriots, and it was at Heinz Field, and it was when the Patriots had that 21 game win streak. Do you remember that, where it like went from one, and the Steelers just annihilated them? And I was at that game, and it was awesome. I mean, like those memories of just being at Heinz Field, and being with my dad and doing the tailgating thing and just experiencing that. I think that's a huge reason why I'm doing what I'm doing for a living today, is just because I fell in love with the game by going down there all the time, just seeing it live.
That's great. Yeah. I knew we had up on some way, JJ. We're both Giants fans, my dad and I. So we have these amazing Patriot victories in our world. And poor Tom is just
I mean, we never win. Patriots are just such a down bad team.
Yeah, they're terrible.
Just wait, Tom. The next 40 years is gonna be rough for you. All right, just wait.
Yeah. Hey, look, it was bad when I was a kid. My memories of Patriots games were terrible. Steve Grogan and the neck brace. But we bounced back. I mean, you definitely took something from your childhood, this love of the game,
You probably went to school for writing.
Marketing. I went to school for marketing. I had this in high school, I didn't have normal jobs. I didn't do, I built websites. I taught myself how to do graphic and web design. And so I did that when I was in high school. And then I sort of was like, do I want to do that in school or do I want to go to college and study design? And I've said that I would get the business background. So I went into marketing and then kind of wanted to merge those two worlds together.
Yeah, I mean, look, you just got this, incredibly successful brand. I think you probably started the drafting quarterbacks late for fantasy drafts. Like, you kind of started that. I think. So actual advice, that's something that these guys could use. They are co-managing a team for the first time in about 40 years. So
we had when I was 15 years old, my dad ran a league, typed up the scores on like a typewriter for everybody. Like, it was
amazing.
So this is the first time we're back together again.
It's amazing.
So it's the league that I'm commissioner of. These guys have the 4th pick, and I think they're probably gonna, ask you for some advice.
Yeah, at 4, I think we're in our league. We're probably looking at Eckler as a possibility, but being Giants fans and Saquon being so good potentially so good this year, I thought maybe we should build our team around Saquon. And take him at 4, and then see what comes back around and go from there. Advice: Eckler versus Saquon there, ups and downs of that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously depending on league scoring and all that kind of stuff, I like Eckler in the majority of formats over Saquon. Here's the thing. Emotionally, you want to take Saquon, right? Emotionally, you want to be invested. But here's the thing. You can hedge that emotion and you can not get Saquon. And then when Saquon hopefully is good this year and the Giants are good, it's a win-win then. You get that win still from Saquon and from the Giants. But I have Eckler ahead of Saquon. I think he would be the pick if you're going the running back direction.
What about the trend that you see today? It used to be he always picked running backs in the first 2 rounds or something like that. Now I see people going more for receivers. Is that true? Or?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're definitely seeing a more wide receiver heavy approach, and there's a lot of logic and reason behind doing stuff like that. I mean, you could argue that that's the way that a lot of people should have been drafting for years and years at this point. Now, in the first 2 rounds of your draft, you probably should try to get one running back in most formats. Obviously, if you're in like a start 3 running back, 1 wide receiver type league, then, you don't need to force the issue at wide receiver. But in most formats, it's 2 running backs, 2 or 3 wide receivers, and like a flex, right? And so that tells you that the demand for wide receiver is either just as great as running backs, you need to start just as many of them, or it's more in a lot of cases, because oftentimes you're going to start 3 wide receivers instead of 2, right? And so if you take a step back and you look at where players have been drafted historically in terms of average draft position, and then how well they perform in terms of points per game, right? So the 50th overall pick scores 12 points per game one year. The 50th overall pick the next year scores 11 points per game. You can draw out a trend line and see what we would expect to happen at all of these different average draft positions per position, right? And what you see at the running back position is there's a massive, massive drop off after about the 2nd round of your draft, when you get into like round 3 of like a 12-team league. And so it then gets very, very flat through about round 7, round 8. Essentially, the round 7, round 8 running backs that you can get there, from a ceiling perspective, from a how well they can perform on the higher end, they're not that much different than a mid round 3 into round 4 into round 5 running back. And so, if you're not able to get a running back in the first couple of rounds, you really should go with more of like what's now called a 0 RB strategy, where you just kind of punt the position, hope that injuries occur. I mean, not to the human beings that are getting injured, but you know what I mean. And then sort of take advantage of that because it's inevitable at the running back position. So if you go 0 RB, if you go that route, if you aren't able to get a running back in the first 2 rounds. But I go with a hero RB or an anchor RB approach all the time, which is get a running back in the first 2 rounds, your Eckler, if you will. And then from there, start pounding wide receiver, feel really good at that position. If there's a good elite tight end that falls, that's okay to go after. Even some quarterbacks you can hypothetically go after in certain formats, but really go after the wide receiver position because the demand there is so great. And there's a huge, huge drop off this year, in particular, wide receiver around round 8.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, in round 2 for us at pick 4, we're kind of looking at a possible Mahomes, Mark Andrews, Josh Jacobs, Stevenson world, or we can go to our like tier 2 wide receiver there. So I think we have a real problem at pick 4 coming back at 12 teams.
It's tough. It's 12. It's tough in the second round in 12-team leagues. I'm assuming it's a 12-teamer. And yeah, it's tough in the second round when you're in the front half of the draft, because you get your choice of an Eckler type, what have you. I'm assuming that more home league drafts or like drafts like this league will go more running back heavy than what we see in some. And
also we don't have that third receiver spot.
Yeah, right.
Two flex, tight end flex.
Yeah. I would just say to be aware of where that sort of flatness starts to occur at the running back position. To me, it's around Najee Harris, Travis Etienne. Like those guys are more fades for me this year and players to avoid, not because I don't think they're going to see enough volume. I think they'll see enough volume. It's just that they have backfield partners that can really cap their ceiling. They're not going to likely be big receivers in their backfields. And so it's just, that's the section of the draft that typically starts sort of this hypothetical running back dead zone. And obviously that can start in the 4th round in some leagues and the late 2nd round in some leagues, but the dead zone itself always exists in some way. It's just the opportunity cost changes per league.
Right. Got it. Yeah, no, that's definitely true. You look at it year in and year out, it's hard to find a running back that hits, in that from that zone. Are there any players, Bernie, that you have been seeing in the offseason that you like and you want to get JJ's take on?
Really, I'm always worried about the value of Aaron Jones without Rodgers.
Yeah, the one thing with Green Bay that I find interesting is that the market is sort of baking in the idea, and by the market, I just mean average draft position and where these guys are getting drafted, but they sort of have already baked in the idea that Jordan Love is bad, that this is going to go south. But Aaron Rodgers wasn't very good last year. Like he was 2 years prior, obviously, and winning MVP, but he was not great last season. And so I think Aaron Jones, that he's in that running back dead zone range, but if you're going to target guys in that dead zone range, you're going to want to get pass catching backs like an Aaron Jones, like a Rashad White, even Joe Mixon to some degree. He's falling there at times. They're fine to get because we know that they're going to see work through the air, and that's the most important thing. But I actually am investing in there's 3 offenses that I think are just under the radar that could really blow up this year. Green Bay is one of them. So I've gone after like Christian Watson a lot. I love Jaden Reed, their rookie that they got from Michigan State. And then there's Washington with Sam Howell, who I think it's incredibly interesting with Eric Bieniemy coming in as offensive coordinator. They have unbelievable weapons there. Jahan Dotson's a beast. And so Sam Howell, who has the rushing mobility, has the mobility. He's not a dad runner. Sam Howell is someone who has some upside. And then the Steelers are the last one. Again, weapons, George Pickens, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth. They had Allen Robinson to play the slot role, which he didn't really play enough in LA, and that's part of the reason why he failed. And Kenny Pickett could take a natural step as a sophomore in the league, and he also has some of that mobility. So I think those 3 offenses are all kind of underpriced because most of the market is just assuming that those offenses aren't going to be that good when it's not that hard to imagine, given the environment for these quarterbacks, those quarterbacks are okay.
So that's exciting, especially if you want to pick up somebody like George Pickens, who isn't.
That's late.
That's late, and you kind of hoping that he could like do something for you if he becomes a consistent player.
Great.
Sounds great. Well, this is super helpful. Hopefully you guys will, be able to use some of this advice when you draft.
Before you go, JJ, I make bets based on my heart and gut alone.
Good idea.
And always. And this year, I just, I think, stumbled upon one talking about our first pick of the draft. I think maybe Saquon Barkley versus Austin Eckler, regular season, most points, PPR league, ESPN scoring, or whatever league you like. Loser has to send the other podcast a world's greatest dad.
Perfect. I love it. I'm in. I'm 100% in. Yeah.
All right, book it.
I love it.
Now we have something to root for.
See, now you can get Austin Eckler, and then it's a true win-win for you.
Now it's a true hit.
And we'll just put it right back here, the mug, when we win.
It'll be our first thing on our shelf.
Thank you, JJ. We really appreciate having you on here, and good luck to you, and have a great season.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it.
Hey, you can find JJ's podcast everywhere podcasts are found. It's called the Late Round Fantasy Football Podcast. And he's got a Patreon, and that's patreon.com/lateroundfantasy. And his Twitter is LateRoundQB.